And welcome everybody to the 12th edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eric J. Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, the czar of just about everything these days. Coming at you as we always do from the beautiful podcast studio here in Santa Ana, California. One big change in the format today. We don't have a PJ. We have no wizard. So instead we have this strange character who we'll introduce momentarily. But we do have a fantastic guest for you today, some guy named Omar Khouri, who probably you've never heard of, but he's very important. TCPAWorld famous because he's the guy who created the wrong number bar, a homage to the TCPAWorld out in North Carolina. And the guy has gone and named a drink after the Czar. So, of course, I'm going to have the guy on the show. He was also a repeat litigator, not a professional plaintiff, he will have you know. So we'll be talking to him briefly. You're going to love that interview. A little bit lighter than we usually have here on the show, but we've got plenty of heavy stuff to talk about ahead of time. But before we get there, why don't we introduce ourselves, and we'll start with you, Ms. Queenie.
Hi, I'm Queenie of Troutman Firm and TCPAWorld.com.
This is probably the last time that you ever say the phrase Troutman Firm on the podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, May 1, of course, everybody, you already know this, but Troutman Amin LLP, paperwork's finalized, totally off to the races, bank accounts open. We're ready to go. We are roaring and ready to go. And we've got that beautiful signage out there in front of our new office. New swag coming. Oh my goodness, Colin, you got to put up a little picture of our t-shirts. This is really good stuff that we've got. All right, who else do we have? This one over here is very talkative today. Hi, who are you?
Hi guys, my name is Brittany. I am the Baroness of the TCPAWorld, and I am an attorney at the Troutman Firm.
Fantastic stuff. Good to have you, Baroness. And to her left.
I am Tori. I'm the dame of TCPAWorld and Troutman Firm, soon to be Troutman Amin.
Yay! Also, she's a lawyer. And out there floating in the ether, the always transcendent and lovely. Who are you?
I am Angelica, and I'm a paralegal at the Troutman Firm.
Also known as the...
Oh, the Duchess. I'm so sorry. How could I forget?
How could you forget? I mean, sincerely.
The almighty Duchess.
Whoa. Let's take it down to about a 6, okay? Slow down. There's only one almighty around here. And who do we have all the way at the right? Who are, literally, who are you?
Hi, I'm not PJ, but I'm Jessica. I'm new here. I'm the law clerk. And I'm very excited to be here today.
Jessica Trin, I believe is your last name. Mm-hmm. And we do not yet have a name for you. Mm-hmm. Because we're not sure if we're going to give you a name. And I'm kind of being serious, but I'm kind of not, because we're waiting on bar results. This is really cool. Everyone, TCPAWorld, we've got to all be on pins and needles. Is Jessica going to pass the bar? Tremendous pressure on you right now. Tremendous. Do you guys feel it in the room? It's tremendous pressure.
The exam's done. She can't do anything about it anymore.
But I'm
feeling positive.
I feel tremendously confident. But you know what? Either way, you've got a place here at Troutman Firm. It's going to be Troutman Amin LLP. You're new, but you have been fantastic. Your contributions have already been extremely meaningful. Yeah. And we really, honestly, I don't know how we got along without you. So thanks for being here, not just at the show, but at the firm. It's great to have you. All right, folks, to work. Lots going on right now. We're going to break down the big CMS ruling, which is probably the biggest news. But the other biggest news, of course, the NPRM from the FCC that we've been following, right? Closing the lead generation loophole. We had the big story where I broke it down in black and white, super clean, about the public knowledge proposal to take away all intermediaries and require consent to go directly to the good or service provider from the consumer with nobody in between, right? That is the end of the lead generation marketing, performance marketing world. It's done. It's over. Stick a fork in it. There are certainly other kinds of affiliate traffic. You could certainly do direct-to-site campaigns, but the idea of now getting consumers to come onto a website, comparison shop, fill out a form, take that disclosure, and sell it for money, for profit, like thousands of companies do, and of course the opportunity for direct-to-consumer marketers to buy those leads and to have a nice, very reliable source of customers that come to them that they have to pay a little bit for, but they get that nice, tidy stream of potential customers. Gone, right? That is gone if this NPRM comes to fruition. If you, my good listener, don't comment and do something, of course, R.E.A.C.H is here. The Responsible Enterprises Against Consumer Harassment is pushing hard. Our firm, the Troutman Amin LLP, currently still Troutman Firm, giving free legal services to the industry on behalf of R.E.A.C.H because we love you guys and we want to keep you in business. And we're successful. How successful are we? Pooch, how successful have we been?
How successful are we? Well, let me tell you. So
Let me tell you.
recall a few weeks ago, CMS came out with these proposed 2024 rules, and it shook up the lead gen industry. These rules came out, if you recall, before the NPRM, if I'm correct. And one of the biggest provisions in the proposed rule was that TPMOs, third-party marketing organizations, can no longer share beneficiary information, i.e. phone numbers or leads to one another. The CMS had proposed that they were going to just shut that off in the Medicare space. And, we have a lot of folks that we know in the Medicare space, in the lead gen space, Medicare suppliers, buyers, et cetera. And R.E.A.C.H, right? Organizations like R.E.A.C.H had a huge impact on pushing back on that TPMO provision.
I don't know about organizations like R.E.A.C H. I'm pretty sure R.E.A.C H is the one that pulled this off.
I, myself and Countess, had a hand in drafting that very, very special comment that, if you ask Eric and I, we were the ones that pushed.
There's no question. I mean, look,
Absolutely.
if you look at the position that R.E.A.C H took on each of the items that the CMS ruled on, guess who got 100% right? We did.
Absolutely.
We did. The CMS folks literally followed the R.E.A.C H guidelines. And I just think that, not the guidelines, excuse me, the comment.
The comment.
And I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and if you read the comment, right, we push back on the TPMO sharing beneficiary contact information provision. However, R.E.A.C H, in line with R.E.A.C H's current standards, the CMS standards were in line with a lot of them, right? And R.E.A.C H voiced those.
We supported it.
We supported it. Those provisions, and very important to keep in mind, although, we've gotten rid of that TPMO provision for now. There's other ticky-tack regulations within the CMS guidelines that are going to be extremely, extremely important for you folks to keep in mind.
But consumer-friendly for the most part, and not crazy, right?
Not crazy. In line with R.E.A.C H, in line with the CMS guidelines, but you are going to have to shift around a little bit here.
Can we talk about some of that?
Absolutely. So we have one of the biggest ones is like call recording requirements. Right, whether you're a TPMO, whether you're an agent, et cetera, making sure that you are recording those calls. I know a lot of folks in the lead gen industry, right? You have call centers in Pakistan or India, and I don't know that folks are actually recording those calls, right? And it's really so CMS has more insight into how the consumers are being treated, whether they're being provided transparency, right, with the agents, and kind of just like listening in on those calls to kind of monitor it. Another one is, there's going to be 2 disclaimers that you're going to have to include on all marketing materials, right? So anyone who's doing direct mail, websites, O&O sites, whatever it is, if you fall within the definition of marketing within the CMS rules, which are different than the TCPA rules, keep that in mind, you're going to have those disclaimers included in. It's a lot of it's just based off transparency, right? There's another disclaimer saying that, you're not affiliated with the government, so you're not tricking consumers and whatnot. So
yeah, consumers do get tricked quite a bit by some of these materials. So look, I think this is all great. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, no, and then there's consent requirements, how long the duration of your permission to contact lasts.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
Before the 2024 rule, there was nothing stated clearly in the CMS guidelines on how long PTC lasts. Folks just assumed it was about 6 months because when the OEP season, the EP season change, right? Once you're changing seasons, then their consent's kind of expiring. Well, CMS finally made it very clear that consent, that PTSC consent, different from TCP consent, will expire within 6 months.
6 months.
Correct.
That's your great. Well, look, this is all fantastic, and again, I think R.E.A.C H supported essentially all of these rules that have just come down. Look, I mean, if you guys have questions about this, you see how conversant the Queenie is. Like, we are masters. I mean, we can't use that word expert or specialist. I'm just going to use that word master. I mean, when it comes to the CMS, we've got this stuff up, down, left, right, and sideways. So, feel free to give us a call.
Mind you, the rules were 754 pages. I read them all.
Yeah, I read every line. And that's why Queenie is a winner. Speaking of Queenie winning, massive victory delivered on behalf of one of our fantastic clients in a case brought by Mr. Salays, who, of course, is a repeat litigator. And, I mean, Pooja just thrashed the guy. I mean, figuratively, kind of. So, massive ruling, a motion to dismiss granted on all counts, particularly focused on vicarious liability allegations that were insufficient to state a claim. But to me, the biggest win was on the motion to strike the class.
Yep.
Court threw the class out completely because the words used in that definition were insufficient to actually demonstrate certifiability at the pleading stage, which is required, as Brittany, the Baroness, will tell you. So, look, these are unfortunately, these are disfavored motions, which is too bad because they really should be heavily favored. The plaintiffs should not be allowed to get into the class discovery phase until they have actually stated a viable certification track. Right? Otherwise, you get into a situation where you're in discovery with massively broad discovery with a class definition that could never be certified. It's extremely burdensome. It's chaotic and it's ridiculous. And Pooja stepped up and prevented that from happening for one of our best clients. So great win.
Thanks.
Really, really nice victory. You are a monster. I am proud to call you my partner. Really, really excited for the future.
Thank you.
Enough about all of that. Tori, what do you got for us?
I want to talk about Zanoni versus CHW Group. This was an interesting ruling that came from a magistrate judge down in Florida. Essentially, they said because the website on their privacy policy had that they may call this person with an ATDS, that was essentially an admission to using an ATDS. And so that means that even these people who had this on their site that never use an ATDS once can be subject to a suit, just by means of having that in their privacy policy.
Wow.
It's a crazy ruling. Absolutely nuts. So look, prudent folks out there, good companies, always want to be ahead of the curve. They always want to be safe, right? And in the TCPA world, as we all know, the definition of ATDS, automated telephone dialing system, as well as the definition of ADAD or of auto dialer, right, at the state level, these things are constantly in flux. And so from my perspective, it makes sense for a good business to want to try to be safe and to disclose to consumers, hey, look, the technology we use might qualify under some crazy definition that some judge comes up with somewhere as an auto dialer and you give us consent to contact you regardless. This is not an admission. It's not an admission as a legal basis. There's no way that you could frame that as an admission. But this court, this magistrate judge, again, this is not a district Article 3 judge, this is a magistrate judge, kind of the lower judges, kind of looking at the mere fact that there was a mention of an auto dialer in a privacy policy and saying, oh, well, you've admitted that you use one. That's crazy. I mean, that is absolutely bonkers. So it's definitely something we're going to keep an eye on. Interestingly, that magistrate judge now, that decision is going to go to Judge Cannon, is the Article 3 judge down there that's assigned to that case. Judge Cannon, the Honorable Judge Cannon is, in my opinion, a very good judge, Trump appointee. I'll be very curious to see what she does with that ruling. Hopefully, I don't know who the defense lawyers are. That always makes me a little uneasy, right? You flub something and get rolled by a magistrate judge. Probably, and I don't know this, I didn't look at the briefing, but probably the defense lawyers didn't do the best job to begin with. So I'm a little uneasy. But again, going up to a good judge, hopefully Judge Cannon will recognize that this is not good policy. We do not want to discourage people from giving prudent upfront disclosures to consumers, because if they do, they might, get hoisted upon their own petard.
I mean, think about the TCPA disclaimers that are all out there, right? A lot of companies are using ATDS, but not necessarily pre-recorded calls. But the disclaimers, like the leads they're buying, typically, from what I've seen, say ATDS or pre-recorded call. But they're not making pre-recorded calls at all. They don't even have the ability to make pre-recorded calls, right?
Oh, but you've admitted it, Pooja.
So,
I'm sorry. It's admitted. That's pretty
just
wild.
Send me to the wrong number.
Well, good. Hey, stop. We haven't gotten to that part yet. Well, good job, Tori. Thank you for that coverage. And Pooja, thank you for weighing in. Let's throw it over to the disembodied head, Duchess.
So I have a couple of things I'm going to talk about on the state front. So most recently, Iowa is the most recent state that has passed state privacy laws, consumer data protection laws. It does not go into effect until January 2025. So obviously people have time to prepare for the new law. But the only thing that kind of really stood out to me, I mean, it's like your typical, right to know, right to delete, right to data portability.
Well, Duchess, that's not typical, right? We don't live in Europe. Okay? so this is unusual.
In her state head, it is.
So here in California, of course, we do have, various rights with regards to data privacy, but that is not universally the case here in the United States of America. In fact, there's only a handful of states, Colorado, Virginia, California, and now Iowa, where these rights exist. So go ahead and break it down a little bit more if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so I guess I was saying that because I've been digging in a lot, and there are actually 21 states that are currently pending with data consumer privacy protection laws. And so the two most recently ones added were Louisiana and PA to bring us up to 21, and we have now 6 states. So when I'm digging through all of the these are like your kind of typical standards that all the states are pushing forward. It's very like, it's pretty similar stuff. The right to know, the right to access, the right to delete, right to data portability. Those are all kind of repeatedly seen throughout.
Let me pause you again, Angelica, because in your quest to defend yourself effectively, you've again buried the lead, which is there are 21 different states, right, that are currently contemplating new privacy laws. 21.
Huge.
That's craziness. And we've now got 6 on the books. I only counted 4, so I didn't realize that we were up to 6. What are the 6 states that have these laws on the books currently?
Hold on, let me find.
Oh, well, no, this is just bad TV, Angelica. Come on.
I got it right in front of me. It's California, Colorado, Connecticut, Virginia, Utah, Iowa.
Iowa joining such privacy juggernauts as Utah and Connecticut. I don't understand. Like it feels like a mishmash. Like you wouldn't think that Utah and Iowa would be, the ones out there with these privacy laws. But hey, what do I know? Okay, so anything else aside from like the comprehensive data privacy regime that sounds like already exists elsewhere? Anything unique in Iowa that folks should keep in mind?
The only thing unique in Iowa that I saw that kind of sets it apart is just the response time that the companies have, or to respond to these requests. I think Iowa is kind of probably realizing that, hey, they're going to be probably getting inundated and flooded with all of these requests. Most states are 45 days, and then you have the ability to request 45 additional days. Iowa starts out with 90 days with the ability to request 45 additional days to process the request.
Interesting. Okay. That's a pretty good length of time. You got 90 days. That's not that bad. All right. What else do you got for us other than new privacy laws?
I know. So my other fun, exciting stuff is telemarketing state laws. We have 2 new recent state laws that have been, I guess, changed, some amendments to the law, which was Mississippi and Tennessee. So with Mississippi, they just kind of clarified, kind of definitions around the do not call registry, and brought some clarity to that language. And then they turned over power from, I want to say, the Public Service Commission over to the Attorney General. So it's kind of like the only major movement in Mississippi. However, with Tennessee, they did add in text messaging, like solicitation. They provided a comprehensive definition of what they consider text message solicitation, and then they replaced all throughout the whole entire law, wherever it just says telephone solicitation, to read as telephone or text message.
Now, is there a private right of action in Tennessee or Mississippi?
No, not that I know of, not that it was added anyhow.
Okay, so then switching over to Washington State, that's the big one to me, because that one's got that private right of action. What's going on out there?
Yes. So Pooja covered Washington State in detail for you guys last week. So yes, Washington State does allow for a private right of action with penalties of $1,000. They also increased repeat violations to up to $1,000. And it tracks more along the lines of like what the federal do not call. And they added some more clarifying definitions to their state law as well.
Yeah, Washington, that was big news.
So the big takeaway there for Washington is Washington always had a private right of action for DNC violations, right? What they went ahead and did was add a private right of action for $1,000 for an ATDS violation.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's the definition out there? Is it broad like Florida?
It's not as broad as Florida. I think it almost tracks the federal statute. And then instead of using the Washington DNC state, they're just referring back to the CFR. Wow. And then Washington, as folks know, SEMA, they're very big. They take their telemarketing violations pretty seriously. So, they just, I think it was in 2022, they had made other amendments, some wonky amendments. They were refreshing their statute, it seems, every year or so.
So Washington, is it the new Florida?
No. Not for the ATDS definition, but perhaps for lawsuits. We'll see.
Well, that's what I'm
right.
implying.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've been waiting for Oklahoma for litigation to ensue. Nothing's happened there, right? So it's just there's no telling just yet.
Speaking of Florida, Angelica, what's going on in Florida?
What's laid on the table? So today we were kind of researching what laid on the table is, which means that it is kind of just at a halt for now. It's not really going anywhere.
See, I hate pronouns. What is it? What is it? What is it?
The amendments.
The amendment to the
Level
amendment.
set for our poor audience. They're like, it. What is laid on the table? What words are coming out of your mouth? There was a series of amendments that were proposed, both at the House and at the Senate, that were competing amendments this year. It just sounds like a rehash because this is the exact same thing that happened last year, except, wait for it, this year the Senate amendments are more pro-consumer, and the House amendments are more pro-business, the exact opposite of what we saw last year. What are you people doing? Like, this is crazy. The same people in the same house have now swung from being pro-consumer to pro-business, and the other side has done the exact opposite. So once again, we are likely to not have any amendments, the amendments being the it as opposed to the they, that has been laid upon a table somewhere, I suppose. Not this table, that's a poker table. Okay, Angelica, I love you. Thank you for everything that you do. And thanks for that breakdown. Tons going on at the state level. Thank goodness we have a Queenie and a Duchess to stay on top of all of it. Speaking of staying on top of things, don't know why this is my segue. Hi, Baroness. What do you got?
So I have a case, breast versus open-sided MRI. Plaintiff files a motion for class certification in a TCPA junk fax case. These are Eric's favorite, he says, fax cases.
Those words have never been spoken on this podcast before. They will never be spoken again. But carry on.
So defendant opposed the plaintiff's motion for class certification on two grounds. First, he argued that under a recent FCC ruling that faxes received by non-traditional fax machines, i.e. those sent to emails, were not actionable under the TCPA. And the court held that because the ruling was issued by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs and not the commissioners themselves, the ruling was not...
Entitled to deference under the Hobbs Act?
Yes, exactly. And the second point defendant argued was that a single receipt of a fax does not constitute concrete harm under Article 3 of the Constitution. But the court looked at other courts that found that receipt of a single voicemail constituted concrete harm, that faxes too should fall within that umbrella, which is interesting.
Great breakdown. Can you imagine working for me, by the way, and you're sitting here and you're trying to break down like a complex concept like the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, the FCC, issued a bureau-level opinion, which the court found was not final legislative action entitled to deference under the and your boss is sitting next to you going, the Hobbs Act, dummy? Yeah, like we've got the coolest job in the world. But as you can tell, it's nothing but nerds. It's just nerd city around here.
I was getting there.
But it actually is a great ruling, though, because honestly, the Hobbs Act deference right now is massively important. You all remember that the Supreme Court came out with a ruling called PDR Resources. A couple years back, this was Justice Kavanaugh's first big opinion. And essentially what the court held was, the FCC rulings are not always automatically entitled to this huge level of deference that something called the Hobbs Act is supposed to take away the jurisdiction of district courts to question what the FCC is doing. And the Supreme Court said, no, you got that all wrong. Sure, that's what the statute says. But what we say as the Supreme Court is that only if final legislative action has taken place would the Hobbs Act be triggered, one, and then two, that company has to have the ability to have challenged the agency action at the time. So for instance, if the company didn't exist at the time, then they couldn't have made that challenge effectively. But so here we've got a situation where, really interesting, the defendant, usually it goes the other way around, the defendant wanted to use a bureau-level FCC ruling. What the FCC had essentially said, the TCPA does not apply to faxes sent to email, right, to non-traditional fax machines. Now, the TCPA doesn't say that. The TCPA refers to facsimiles sent. It doesn't really say to a fax machine that is a physical fax machine. And so courts have really taken issue with this. It's called the AmeriFactors ruling. Is that right? Or,
AmeriFactors.
The AmeriFactors ruling. I just know that off the top of my head. That's crazy. By the FCC, and basically said that's contrary to the plain language of the statute. Now, the defendant saying, well, Hobbs Act says, court, you have to apply it. But the court says, no, This is a bureau level opinion. It's not final legislative action. It's been approved by the commissioners, and therefore I'm not going to apply this ruling. Really important, interesting stuff. The net takeaway is that because that issue was taken off the table, there was no individualized issues in that case that were sufficient to defeat commonality, and the court found that the common issues predominated, and had the AmeriFactors determination gone the other way, presumably that case would not have been certified. So this is high stakes, right? This is a smaller company. You're talking about what, like a $10 million swing in that ruling, I would think. Think about that $10 million, motion ruling, swing of the gavel. And for, a smaller company, that's a lot of money. So thank you, Baroness. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. Now, drum roll, please. Last but not least, we're going to throw it over to Jessica. Hi.
Hi.
What do you have for us?
Okay, so mine is less exciting, but it's more about just remember to just show up. Because in this case, we have Champion against Sethi, and I don't know if the TCPAWorld remembers Champion, and also Alvord. Okay.
Dr. Evil, yeah. But this is a different Alvord, though. I don't know. There's probably some relation, right? So what's ironic, though, is Dr. Evil Alvord is, of course, the guy behind R.E.A.C.H. He loves to bring suits on behalf of Champion, right, Doug. And so Doug and a different Alvord, I don't know if they're like buddies, friends, pals, lovers, wives, nephews, cousins, I don't know, brought this suit. Spouses, yeah, that was the one I missed, huh? So anyway, but keep going.
So Champion did bring suits against Sotomayor, Sethi, and then also Zamora. And these are individuals. I just want to emphasize that. And the thing is, Sethi and the other two, they did not show up to court, and so there was a default against them. And Sethi showed up late and wanted to fight that default. And the court was just like, no, you can't do that. And so they were considering judgment against the three that were alleged. And Champion, he was alleging $1.6 million.
Wow.
And he was saying that 540 text messages were sent. And then we also have, on top of that, another, I think it was 800 million. And that was saying
800,000.
800,000, I'm sorry, 800,000, not million. And that was alleging about 460 texts that are also sent. And right now there's no judgment against any of the three, but the court was saying that they want to look into to see if those texts were actually sent. But this is just a good reminder to just show up and just be present and just to remember to respond and answer to any filings that are against you, because the TCPA world is just super crazy and you just need to be on top of things.
It's pretty good. Be on top of things. I like that being the lesson that you're delivering, Jessica. You need to be on top of things too. But just like show up and be present, right? This is a good lesson in life, and it's a good lesson in the TCPA world. Yeah, the facts are really interesting. You might be asking yourself, I know I'm asking myself, how did 540 text messages get sent to a repeat litigator Champion before he said stop? I'm curious about that. And plus, how many phone numbers was he receiving these messages on? So a lot of these guys will use honeypots, right? They've got 40, 50, 60, 100, 200 phone numbers. And I think that R.E.A.C.H is doing this. I don't know that. I think that R.E.A.C.H is doing this. And so they'll be netting huge volumes of phone numbers or phone calls, and they'll turn around and file suits individually, right? Most of these high-dollar TCPA cases that we're talking about are class actions, right? Of course, that's what we're here to do, is defend these massive class actions where billions and billions of dollars are on the line, keeping companies in business that are good companies that are caught up in some baloney lawsuit. But these guys are bringing individual suits, and they're hoping that people will do just what Sethi did, just what Zamora did, and not show up. And these are people, right? These are just regular people that have been personally sued, and it could happen to you. I'm just kidding, not you, but you. No, but in seriousness, it could happen, right? And so if you are sued, the bottom line is Jess is correct, 100% correct, and she's new here, and she's got this figured out, okay? If you get sued, you have to do something. Not doing anything is not an option.
And it's making bad law. Dr. Strange.
Dr. Strange.
Serial plaintiff Strange. What do I think of him? I think of Dr. Strange. Strange just won.
Marvel just sent me a demand letter to stop using the phrase Dr. Strange. God, those guys over at Disney are quick. Thank you, Pooja. You got us sued.
serial plaintiff, Mr. Strange, Clinton Strange, just last week or earlier this week, same thing. He won on a motion for default judgment because the the defendant didn't show up. But it's just making bad law is what I was trying to get at.
Making bad law, I'm sure that's less consequential to them than having to pay $2.4 million.
To my clients.
Yeah, that's also an issue. All right, well, look, everybody, this has been a lot of fun, but now it's time to have even more fun and go through the power of the Troutman firm to talk with Omar Khouri. That's right, the owner of the Wrong Number Bar. Omar, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I am super excited to have you. I know there's going to be a few people watching the show. They're going to let out like an audible groan because you started off as a plaintiff in TCPA cases. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But I got to say, man, anyone who parlays some TCPA litigation into opening a bar themed after wrong number phone calls and then goes and names a drink after me is a buddy of mine. So really excited to have you on this show, man. Why don't you tell everybody kind of how you got started with these TCPA suits?
It was really just out of boredom during COVID. So my regular day job is in IT. I own an IT company. I've been doing that since 2006. And during COVID, when everyone was locked down, I just didn't have much work to do. So I was at home a lot more and with a lot more free time. So I just started answering all those calls. And at first I would just waste their time. Because I knew it was a telemarketer. I don't need 6 car warranties or whatever. So I would just waste their time or just answer nonsense. So I figured if I waste their time, they're not going to call me back. But that didn't work. So then I figured, well, what if I tried to make them pay for calling me? And at the time, I didn't actually know that you could sue a company for calling you. I learned that after the fact. So then I figured, well, if I can make them make it cost them too much money to call me, they'll stop calling me. And that didn't work either. They just kept on calling, so I just kept on doing it.
How are you making them cost them money? Just by taking up their time and keeping them on the line, or were you doing something else?
No, originally I was just wasting their time, and then it was okay. Since that doesn't do anything, I'll go through whatever they're trying to sell me. I'll answer their questions, find out who they are, and then send a demand letter. It's like, here's the laws that you broke, and here's what I want to avoid going to court. And most of the time, we come to an agreement.
Now, were you able to educate yourself on the TCPA, which, by the way, none of you should be like this man. He is a terrible human being. These innocent telemarketers that he is harassing, don't be like this guy. But how did you come to learn about the TCPA? Did you consult a lawyer? Did you just go and do some reading? Like, how'd that come to be?
Google.
Google.
Yeah.
Google.
I learned about the TCPA. I was already on Do Not Call list because something that I do with my clients is tell them whenever we set up like new phone systems or whatever, we always just tell them, hey, by the way, go have a look at this website, protect yourself, put your number on this list. So I've been on the list for years, and I knew that there were penalties for for violating the Do Not Call list on the TCPA. What I didn't know is that North Carolina has its own penalties separate from the TCPA that actually are much harsher penalties. So that's what I started learning about and making claims against.
The Duchess is nodding her head. She's our state law wonk. She knows well that North Carolina, like many states, have very, very stiff penalties for violating the very same corollary statute that they use the TCPA in those regs. So you started bringing lawsuits, sending demand letters at least. How many, if you can tell us, how many demand letters and lawsuits did you send?
I've probably sent out 30 or 40 demand letters. And I think I've had, I want to say 13 or 14 actual cases that I'm filing in court. I have one open in federal court right now.
All right, and now here's the punchline. How much money did you make bringing these demand letters and these lawsuits?
The total has been, I think it's right around $150,000, $160,000. I just settled for $15,000 yesterday with another one.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my
well,
God.
that's look, man, that's not chump change. $160,000, and this is to me my favorite part of the story, Omar. Because if the story had ended here, then I'd be like, this guy Omar, he is a professional litigant. He's a bad actor. But no, No. You have absolved yourself of all sins, in all TCPAWorld sins, by taking that $160,000. And what did you do with that money, Omar? What wonderful thing have you done with this money?
Well, I mean, I know what you're leading to. But there's a few things. I started out just, I didn't know what to do with it first. I paid my bills, paid my mortgage, paid my car payments, just things I had to pay because I wasn't getting paid normally. I used some of it just to help my friends out with things because everyone was struggling at the time. So if someone needed some extra money to pay an electric bill or something, I'd help them. I used some of it to actually go back to school and get my MBA. I used some of it to buy a tiny Japanese car to enter the Mongol Rally in 2021. And one thing I used to do was come hang out at bars downtown. Every time I got a settlement, I would celebrate by going to a bar and just buying a round of drinks for the bar, for a couple $100s. And then one of those bars became available for sale, so I just decided to buy the whole bar.
What a story.
And what did you call the bar? Like, this is delicious.
I renamed the bar the wrong number because those people called the wrong number when they called me.
Right.
And also, it's really fun to answer the phone at the bar and just say, hey, and just pick up the phone and say you called the wrong number.
Oh, that's so good.
I hadn't considered the second piece. All right, so those of you listening right now we're going to have a serious PSA. Right, we've been very light, but now we're going to get very serious. You heard what Omar said, right? These were wrong numbers that enabled him to bring these claims that netted him $160,000 that allowed him to literally buy a bar that he calls the wrong number, which we're going to talk about more here in a second. But the reassigned number database, right, is out there specifically so that you as a caller can avoid calling Omar and giving him money to add more booze to his bar, which, by the way, I think at this point is patronage. You're basically, at this point, if you call him, you're like a Medici, right? They're like you're creating art because I think of the wrong number bar as a high work of art here because I view it as like a homage to the entire TCPA world. And I want to talk a little bit about the theme of the bar. I know the name is the wrong number, but have you added like TCPA themes or telephones or TCPAWorld memorabilia perhaps? I don't know. I'm just curious. What are you doing there from a motif?
I don't have any memorabilia, but I did. We did come up with a bunch of cocktails, or house cocktails, and all the cocktails are named after telemarketing calls that I've had. So things like the mortgage, which is our house old fashioned, which is actually like one of the most popular drinks. We have one called the student loan. We have one called the tax man after the IRS scams. And then shortly after all articles started coming out about me, and I think originally I came across a blog post that you made about me. We ended up naming a drink the Czar, which was your Blanton's Old Fashioned.
Thank you. That's right, folks.
I do think I need to clarify something here.
Sure.
Just because of that blog post, I am not a professional plaintiff. I have a regular day job. If I get a telemarketing call and I'm busy with my regular work, I ignore it. I hang up. But if I'm sitting at home watching Netflix and have nothing else to do, I'll answer the call and see if something comes of it. But I don't agree with the people who are those professional plaintiffs. I don't agree with people who sit there with like 40 cell phones in the box, just trying to make money off it and signing up for all these lists, purposely getting on them. I do not agree with those people.
Now you never did that. You never put your number onto a website.
Never have. And everyone I've gone against, we've gone to court and actually gone through the depositions and gone through discovery. I always ask for those records. Where did you get my name? Where did I sign up to get these calls? Not a single time has there ever been anything produced.
Now I understand you also have a. Go ahead.
Well, most of the time, what does happen is they do admit that they're just using auto dialer. They just dial random numbers. One thing I do every time I answer the phone and they ask me for my name, I give them a fake name. Because that's kind of my own test. Are you really calling for me, or are you just calling a random number? So if I say, oh, who are you calling for? And a lot of times there'll be something like, oh, don't worry, I have your information. I just need you to verify who you are. and I'll come up with some random name. Maybe there's a business card sitting on my desk or something, and I'll just give them that name, and they'll say, oh yeah, that matches our records. So at that point, yeah, I know that you just called a random number.
So Omar, you commit identity theft. That's what I'm hearing right now. But in seriousness, look, you can't possibly defend yourself to my audience, right? My audience is a bunch of rabid call centers that look at every litigant as a bad actor. I, as you know, am much more neutral. I see kind of both sides. I want to stop unwanted calls. I think the lead generation industry has caused a lot of trouble. And I think that we need to stop fraudulent leads that lead to unwanted robocalls on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, the scumbags that are setting up lawsuits, I have absolutely no respect for. It sounds like you're not one of those guys. And again, look, at the end of the day, you took the money, you became like Robin Hood, right? You were taking money from the telemarketers, you were giving it to people in need. I respect that, but I even more respect the fact that you gave to everyone in need by starting a bar. So that's great work. But let's circle back though, because you got a drink named after me, but I think you've got one called the Queenie too, I think. I mean, am I mistaken? Look at Pooja, so proud. biggest smile I've ever seen.
So the Czar is the Blanton's Old Fashioned. The Queenie is the Angel's Envy Sour with no egg whites.
Look at this. He's got it off the top of his head. That's fantastic. That's right. Now I have heard, though, that there might be a possibility, and I don't want to put undue pressure on you, right? But there might be a possibility that you're going to expand the offerings of the wrong number to have a royal court cocktail section on your menu that might have, say, a dame and a baroness.
Once I saw that your firm had nicknames for everybody, well, it just seemed to make sense.
I agree.
To come here and do some taste testing so we know what drink belongs to each person.
Yeah, I think we absolutely are going to get out. There's no question we're going to get out there. And when we do get out there, we're going to bring you some memorabilia. We're going to bring you, some things that are really kind of very special items. I'm not going to tell you what they are. You'll have them. Maybe you have like a little museum in the back, like a TCPAWorld like museum at the bar. Yeah, there'll be some swag. I'm not just talking about swag. Yeah, but like hats, like the tie that the Czar wore when he won.
Yeah.
Look, to me, your bar is now Cooperstown for TCPAWorld, right? Like, this is where I think the whole world should huddle. The whole TCPAWorld, the telecom law section. I think people should come down from DC, up from Florida, obviously from California, and people should come to pay honor to the whole concept of the TCPA, whether you're on the defense side or the plaintiff side. I'm glad that there is now a physical place, a museum. I keep calling it like an homage, but I really think it's like the embodiment of the TCPAWorld spirit. And of course, it's got drinks named after me there. So I just think it's the coolest thing in the world. So I appreciate it. Omar, for our audience, can you just give us a quick tour? Can you move your computer around? I'd love to show people what the bar actually looks like.
Yeah, just let me walk the length of the bar. Right now I'm in the back of the bar. It's long, narrow building.
That is cool, man.
Just walk past the bar.
You got the nice backlit. Looks like the backlit cabinets with the high end. How many? Wow, look at that. How many beers do you have on top? Hi guys, you're famous. Hopefully you've got one of those signs, Omar, that says by being here you agree to be recorded. Oh, the wrong number. That's so cool.
Yes, this is our mural.
But there's no phone. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the martini splash, but you got to play to that phone motif, man. Look, you're talking to a branding master. Like, you take it from me.
Yeah, you might have to repeat that.
No, it's okay. I was just kind of messing with you. No, I mean, it's beautiful, man. You should be really proud of yourself, even though you shouldn't be proud of how you did it, but you should still be proud of yourself. I think it's really cool when somebody, to me, I always wanted to own a coffee shop. I'm telling you a little secret. I always wanted to own a coffee shop, and I knew I would never make money on it, right? Because you don't make money on a coffee shop, but it's just something that you give back to the community, you create a vibe, like something for people to come together. And I feel like if you open a cool neighborhood bar and you call it the wrong number and you have, some memorabilia from TCPAWorld, then you've created a shrine. It's a place that people can come to that have a role in TCPAWorld. Again, whether you're a plaintiff or a defendant or a litigant or a call center. And there's a special place for you now, right? That never existed before. So I think that's really cool, man. I think what you've done is really cool.
People come in. I've had just random customers come in and look for me and ask me how do you do this? I get these calls all the time. How can I stop them? I've had lawyers come. We have a lot of lawyers around here. I've had lawyers come in and ask me how to do it. And on the other side, on my IT business, I do have clients that run call centers, like travel agents and cruise lines and things like that. And they've asked me, okay, how do we avoid running into people like you? And I tell them, like, I have absolutely no problem with people, people doing telemarketing and calling and doing that. That's completely fine. That's a legitimate business. Just follow the rules. That's my whole point. Just follow the rules. If it says if the rule says don't call people on this list, just don't call them.
Well, Omar, look, man, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I love what you've accomplished. Obviously, we're a big fan. We're going to get out there for sure. For folks that are listening, can you give everyone, like, what's the full name and the address of the bar, so if people want to look it up, they can come down and check it out?
So it's called The Wrong Number. We're at 408 West 4th Street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, you can find us.
And we're definitely going to be out there. There's no question. We'll probably host an event there. I understand that happy hours are illegal in North Carolina. That's a great law, guys. You really thought that one through. So we won't be sponsoring a happy hour because that's not permitted, but we will probably sponsor an event of some kind. So if you're in North Carolina, and that's not the worst place in the world. I mean, Charlotte's a very beautiful town.
To clarify, happy hour is illegal. You can't have a special for just a small part of the day. So that means our specials have to be all day long.
Oh,
Even better.
Okay.
So it's more like a happy day.
I see what you're doing there. I love it, man. Well, look, you've been a fantastic guest. At the end of every segment, we always ask the same question. The name of the podcast, of course, is the Deserve to Win podcast. Omar, either as a businessman or as a TCPA litigant, or just any way you want to frame the question, in your opinion, man, what can folks do, call centers, or just anybody in life do to deserve to win like you have?
I'm sorry, something cut out there. You kind of got glitchy. I only heard the last part of the question.
That's okay. I'll ask it again. My question was, what can you do, in your opinion, man? What can people listening to this show do to deserve to win?
To deserve to win? Follow the rules.
Okay, be a little rule follower. Omar, you don't strike me as a rule follower, man. You strike me as somebody that goes out there, blazes his own path, opportunistic, takes what the universe gives them, and then kind of rolls with.
Yeah, but there's still rules. That's the only reason I'm able to do this, because there's rules that allow me to do it.
Fair enough, man. Well, look, you're fantastic. Keep doing what you're going to do. We're going to be out there. We're big promoters of the Wrong Number Bar. I expect there to be Troutman Amin LLP swag there, as well as some cool TCPA-oriented sort of memorabilia we'll get you very shortly. But Omar, you're a great guest. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks.
Well, folks, that was a little lighter than our standard fare here on the podcast. I will say, as I look around at these very nice to look at people that are around me, I miss PJ right now, because I think PJ would have really connected pretty well with Omar. I think the two of them would have hit it off pretty well. I like the guy. I'm going to save my thoughts, though. Let's throw it around. New lady, Jess, the nameless. We haven't yet worked out,
Yes.
If you're going to have a nickname, what it's going to be. This is your first show. That was your first interview. What'd you think?
I thought it was a really good feel-good story. And I love hearing those because it's when he was trying to emphasize that he wasn't that super plaintiff trying to get out and attack these companies, and he was giving his money back to his friends. He made a bar. That really made me happy because, I just love hearing those kinds of stories. He just wanted to help other people and just, make a good story and brand for himself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but I was kind of like, dude, you're not running for office. Don't give me this. I took all of my money and I gave it to people in need. I was like, you start a bar, dude. Does it get to that? That's why you're here. I'm not trying to make you into an altruist. You start a bar, and therefore I like you. Okay, well, good thoughts, Jess. Mm-hmm. Great job today on the show. Loved having you. Welcome to the firm, and welcome to your new life as a celebrity. Tori, what'd you think?
I thought it was certainly an interesting guest to have.
Very insightful.
That's what I got on this guy.
No, Tori, we're coming back to you. That's terrible. Brittany, can you fill the gap here? Can you take a bridge from a nice thought that Jess gave to he was an interesting guest? Yeah.
No, I mean, I really enjoyed his story. I feel like I found myself laughing a lot during his portion. It was interesting how he started this off in the midst of COVID when everybody was bored. And honestly, I feel like a lot of these lawsuits probably stem from that period when nobody had nothing to do and people were getting countless and countless of robocalls. So yeah, it was, I mean, he had an interesting story, and I loved the way he flipped it around, like Jess said, about opening up a bar. I mean, he has a drink after you, which I think is pretty cool, so I'm hoping I'm next. But yeah, no, he was great.
All right. Pooja, Tori, I'm going to give you a little more time here. Pooja, what'd you think?
Well, interesting point, Britt, that he opened it up during COVID, right? I'm curious to see what these TCPA plaintiffs were claiming as their damages and their injury at that time. Like, could you imagine being someone who's getting these nuisance phone calls and they're asking for money and you don't have a job, right? And so, you know, presumably maybe the damages or the injuries could have been higher in the complaints. I don't know. That's an interesting point. But what I was curious about is he typically a pro per plaintiff?
Yeah.
He is?
Yeah.
Okay. Because what was coming to my thought was when you mentioned the R&D, as I mentioned earlier, a bank just got class certified $2.6 million on an R&D case. And then Greenwald, who won that case, the very next day on topclassactions.com, he had a post up saying, still looking for wrong number victims. And
he should go hang out at the wrong number bar.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So I was wondering if Greenwald had represented the guy, but
he has not. But you know what? Now that I'm going to connect the two, Oh my goodness, this is a disaster. But you know who should really park his boats, plural, in front of the wrong number bar is Mike Greenwald.
I think he'll probably get his fifth one now this week.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my God, these guys are rolling in the dough. I know we didn't cover that earlier. You know, we should have an episode where we just talk about how rich the plaintiffs' bar has become.
We should do a top 10
richest.
Yeah,
it's true.
Take tours of their houses.
Yeah.
Like the MTV Cribs.
Oh yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, park that.
Hold that thought.
Hold that thought. Angelica, the Duchess, what'd you think of this guy? And what do you think of Pooja's great idea about the MTV Cribs TCPAWorld Plaintiffs' Lawyers Edition?
I'm all about it. Like TCPAWorld Cribs. I'm all about it. I think it's amazing. I will totally watch it. I'll shout it from the rooftop. But I was thinking, like, when you were talking, we kept calling it like an homage. I was like so glad that you finally landed on the word Mecca, because I'm like, oh, it should be like a Mecca where everybody just goes at least once to the wrong number bar. You know, that's kind of in the TCPA space. So that, and I also obviously a feel-good story. I love the Robin Hood analogy as well. But I mean, the bar is what's most important.
I mean, let's be real. And by the way, your nails today, Angelica,
the same
on point.
thing.
On point. Can you just show them to everybody?
I took a page from Pooja with a little hot nails. I love him.
That's autumn salmon, I think. I don't know. All right. So to close the loop, Tori, we're back to you.
Okay, well, I mean, I still think he's an interesting choice that you picked for a guest. I mean, that's what I was trying to say. But I mean, I don't really have much to say about the guy.
She's just excited to try the Queenie. That's what it is.
This is that quick thinking she's famous for as a trial lawyer.
We're gonna have the Dame Happy Day. That's what we're gonna have.
Dame Happy Day?
Yeah,
not happy hour. Happy day.
Okay. I like how when they answer the phone, they're like, "Hello, you have the wrong number."
Yeah, I kind of went right over that. You're right. Yeah. Like, hi, this is the wrong number. You reached the wrong number.
I wonder if someone hangs up because of it.
I'm sure it happens all the time.
That's another thing. I think he did miss an opportunity, like you said.
Oh, well, you do have a thought. Okay.
Yeah. I think he did miss an opportunity to theme it more phone or TCPA-like instead of
we're going to help the guy
martini
out.
glass.
I mean, look, he took the initial step, but we will be the wind beneath his wings, and we will lift him to heights unimagined, and I'm looking forward to that. So, look, folks, as we wrap up, just keep in mind, the thing that jumped out most to me from this interview was he made $160,000. And he didn't file hundreds of cases. In fact, 13 cases is all he filed. Think about that. He made $160K and only filed 13 cases, and he sent out 30 letters, right? He's just handing out letters, making demands, and he's getting paid. Now, look, I'm not encouraging anyone listening to this to go off and try to duplicate his success. But what I am telling people, right, is we spend a lot of time on the show talking about the aces, right? The wolves, the guys with the mansions now, the big top 10 TCPA plaintiffs' lawyers. But this statute is so dangerous, and of course, even at the state level, right, the remedies are so high that a guy like Omar, you saw this guy, he's a knucklehead. I'm not trying to be mean, Omar. Like, I appreciate you, man. You're cool, but like, this guy does not strike me as a terribly sophisticated individual, and yet he netted 6 figures, right, because this statute is so dangerous. and because specifically of wrong number phone calls. You have to be using the R&D, guys. You just have to be using it. Those of you that were at LeadsCon heard me talking with Karen from the FCC and with our good friend Beth from Somos, the administrator of the reassigned number database. You have to be using this thing. Otherwise, best case scenario for you, you're going to be spending a little bit of money helping this guy build his bar. But that's the fun angle that might happen. The worst case scenario is you're buying another boat for Mike Greenwald, and you don't want to be there. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to this, our 12th edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. We'll see you next time.